man stares at a flickering television screen. On one side, black and white footage of American school children ducking beneath their desks. On the other, a modern smartphone showing headlines about Taiwan, trade bans, and spy balloons. The sound of a typewriter fades into the rhythmic click of a keyboard. Posters once warned of red menace. Now they warn of data theft. Different century, same fear. For decades, the world lived under the shadow of a Cold War, a struggle not fought on open battlefields, but in whispers, proxy wars, and ideology. It ended with one superpower collapsing and another standing alone. But history, it seems, doesn't end. It only changes form. This is the story of how the Cold War returned, reshaped, rearmed, and rewired for the 21st century.
Taiwan Island faces the Pacific directly. And if Taiwan is occupied by a foreign country, for example, it interrupts the continuity of the Chinese coastline and also prevents the Chinese access directly to the Pacific Ocean.
1. Setup and background. The First Cold War divided the planet into two competing visions, the United States and its capitalist allies versus the Soviet Union and its communist bloc. Today the names have changed, but the blueprint remains. At the heart of this new confrontation stands China, rising at a speed no empire in history has matched. In 1990, China's economy was smaller than Italy's. Today it rivals the United States. It builds cities faster than the West can plan them. It produces more steel, exports more goods, and controls key technologies the world cannot function without. In Washington, policymakers began to notice. In Beijing, leaders spoke of a national rejuvenation, the return of China's rightful place at the center of global power. The balance that defined the post-Soviet era, the unipolar world, began to fracture. What had been a globalized partnership started turning into a rivalry, a trade war, a technology war, and some now fear a new Cold War. But unlike the last one, this isn't a contest of nuclear missiles and tanks. This is a war fought with microchips, networks, and narratives, and no one realized how deeply it would shape the future. 2. Chapter 1. Economic Warfare. The first battlefield lies not on land or sea, but inside factories and server rooms. In 2018, the United States placed sanctions on Chinese telecom giant Huawei, accusing it of espionage. Then came chip restrictions, advanced semiconductors, the tiny brains of every smartphone, drone, and missile system. The goal: slow China's rise in artificial intelligence and military technology. But China didn't stand still. It invested billions into homegrown chip research. It began hoarding rare earth elements, the metals used in electric cars, wind turbines, and fighter jets, materials the West desperately needs. This was the new arms race, not uranium, but silicon, not missiles, but supply chains. American allies followed suit. Japan, the Netherlands, South Korea, each pressured to restrict exports of critical tech to China. The globalized world was fragmenting into two ecosystems, one led by the West, the other by Beijing. Chinese media called it containment. Western analysts called it de-risking. But behind both terms was the same reality: mistrust. And in this invisible struggle, economies became weapons. Every ban, every tariff, every investment decision, a move in a game that could decide who rules the future of technology. For the first time in decades, global trade became a battlefield. 3. Chapter 2. Taiwan and the military balance. While the economic war unfolds quietly, the military standoff in the Pacific grows louder. Across the Taiwan Strait, warships and fighter jets trace invisible lines in the sky. Each maneuver is a message, a warning that peace is balanced on a knife's edge. Taiwan, an island of 23 million people, is more than a democratic ally of the West. It's home to TSMC, the company producing over 90% of the world's advanced chips. Losing it would cripple global technology overnight. Beijing calls Taiwan a breakaway province, a family matter that must be settled, peacefully if possible, forcefully if necessary. The United States calls it a partner and a key pillar of Indo-Pacific security. Both sides insist they don't want war, yet both prepare for one. In the South China Sea, China has transformed reefs into fortified islands lined with runways, radar towers, and missile batteries. Nearby, American aircraft carriers cut through the waters on freedom of navigation patrols, a reminder that this sea remains contested ground. Satellites trace every movement, submarines listen in silence, and both sides perform a tense choreography that leaves no room for error. One wrong maneuver, A collision, a misread radar signal, could shatter the fragile calm and spark something far greater. The tension feels eerily familiar, echoing 1962 when American and Soviet ships once faced each other near Cuba, and the world held its breath, wondering if a single mistake might end everything. Back then, a single phone call stopped catastrophe. Today, there are fewer calls and far more weapons. For a moment, time seems to stop, just as it did 60 years ago, with the world holding its breath. 4. Chapter 3, Cyber Espionage and Soft Power. But the most active front of this new Cold War doesn't involve missiles at all. It unfolds in silence, through data, code, and influence. Every day, invisible armies of hackers breach networks, steal research, and plant digital traps. In Washington and London, officials warn of cyber intrusions targeting power grids and defense contractors. In Beijing, state media accuses Western agencies of doing the same. No one knows where the truth ends and propaganda begins. The lines blur in cyberspace. And beyond the digital war lies another contest. One for hearts and minds. During the old Cold War, each superpower sold a dream, the American promise of freedom and prosperity versus the Soviet ideal of equality and strength. Today, the world is split between two visions of digital order: the West's open internet model and China's tightly managed stability. Hollywood exports stories, TikTok exports influence. Sanctions, infrastructure projects, and streaming platforms have replaced the tanks and treaties of the past. Across Africa, Asia, and Latin America, China builds highways, ports, and 5G networks. Blueprints for a new kind of partnership. Billboards show smiling engineers and bullet trains, symbols of progress wrapped in diplomacy. Yet beneath every bridge and fiber optic cable lies strategy. Each investment deepens political loyalty and economic dependence. Meanwhile, the West fights to preserve its own dominance of ideas. Universities, media outlets, and technology firms wage subtler battles over censorship, narrative, and data. The struggle isn't for land, but for perception, for who shapes the stories people see on their screens. This is a cultural arms race where memes replace missiles and algorithms act as silent generals. And somewhere between firewalls and news feeds, a new iron curtain is rising. Not of steel and barbed wire, but of code, policy, and control. The divide is no longer visible, yet it defines how billions will live, think, and connect. 5. Aftermath and reflection. For now, the world remains an uneasy balance. Trade still flows, diplomats still shake hands, flights still cross oceans, but beneath the calm, pressure builds. Sanctions pile higher, militaries modernize faster, and cyberspace grows darker. The question isn't whether conflict exists, it's how long the world can pretend it isn't already happening. Unlike the old Cold War, there are no clear sides. Europe trades with both. India walks a careful line. Africa and the Middle East court investment from East and West alike. This time, global power isn't split down the middle. It's tangled, overlapping, and fragile. A single economic shock or regional clash could unravel it all. And behind every decision, from a factory floor in Shenzhen to a data center in California, lies the same unspoken truth. The world is no longer united by globalization. It's divided by dependence. The first Cold War ended with a wall falling in Berlin. The second may not have walls at all. Only networks and borders drawn in invisible lines. In the end, this struggle isn't just about territory or trade. It's about who defines the future, who builds the technology, writes the rules, and controls the flow of information that shapes how we see the world. The battlefield isn't just land or sea. It's digital, economic, and ideological. And somewhere between silicon and steel, between code and conviction, the fate of the next century is being written. Thanks for watching. If you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe.